She brought her boyfriend to our house while I was at work. When I caught her, she expected tears and begging. Instead, I gave her 2 hours to pack and told her lover he could have my sloppy seconds. Now she's calling me 20 times a day. My name is Knox Whitmore. I'm 42 years old, and I've been pouring concrete for the better part of 2 decades. Started with a pickup truck and a dream. Now I've got 3 crews and more work than I can handle. There's something satisfying about laying a foundation that'll last generations. Or at least, I used to think that way about everything I built. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything started unraveling. The kind of crisp Montana day where the air bites your lungs and the mountains look close enough to touch. I was in the garage, checking my tools before heading out to the Henderson job site, when Marlo appeared in the doorway. She was holding her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes, her face pale as winter frost. Her auburn hair was pulled back in that messy bun she favored when she was stressed, and she wasn't wearing makeup, unusual for someone who worked in real estate where image was everything. "Knox," Marlo said, her voice carrying a tremor I hadn't heard since her mother's funeral. "We need to talk." I set down my hammer and turned to face her fully. After 15 years of marriage, I knew that tone. It meant trouble, the kind that couldn't be fixed with flowers or a weekend getaway. "About what?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew this wasn't about forgetting to take out the trash or leaving my work boots in the kitchen. She held up her phone. "I got a call from the bank. About the cabin rental." My blood went cold. We didn't have any cabin rental planned. I've been working 6 days a week trying to finish the commercial project downtown before winter set in. The last thing on my mind was a romantic getaway. "What cabin rental?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Marlo's eyes darted away from mine. "The one at Bear Lake. The reservation is under my maiden name." The garage suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Bear Lake was 3 hours north, tucked away in the wilderness where cell service was spotty and privacy was guaranteed. It wasn't the kind of place you went alone. "I can explain," she said quickly, but the words sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing them in the mirror. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, buying myself time to think. Ronan was away at college now, starting his freshman year at Montana State. The house felt empty without his laughter echoing through the halls, without his music thumping through the walls at all hours. Maybe that emptiness had affected Marlo more than I'd realized. "Go ahead," I said. "Explain." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and I watched her face change as she read it. The guilty expression deepened, replaced by something that looked almost like panic. "It's not what you think," she whispered. But looking at her standing there in our garage, surrounded by the tools I'd used to build our life together, I knew it was exactly what I thought. And worse, I realized this conversation was just the beginning. I watched Marlo fidget with her phone, her manicured nails tapping against the screen like she was playing some invisible piano. The garage felt colder than usual, though I knew it wasn't the temperature that was making me shiver. "The bank called because the payment bounced," she said finally. "I used the wrong account." "What payment?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to hear the answer. "For the cabin. It's a work retreat," Marlo said, her voice getting stronger, more confident. "The real estate agency is doing team building exercises." I nodded slowly, processing her words. "Which agents are going?" The question caught her off guard. Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. "Several of us," she said vaguely. "Names, Marlo. Give me names." Her face flushed red. "Why does it matter?" "Because I know every agent in your office," I said. "I've poured driveways for half of them. So when you tell me about this mysterious team retreat that I've never heard you mention before, I'd like to know who's organizing it." She looked away, focusing on something behind me. "You don't trust me." "Should I?" The question hung between us like a sledgehammer waiting to fall. I'd always been direct. It came with the territory. You can't build a foundation on shaky ground, and you can't build a marriage on lies. Her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't look at it, but I caught the flash of panic in her eyes. "Knox, I think we need some space," she said. "Space? To figure things out. I've been feeling trapped, like I'm just going through the motions." I leaned against my workbench, the familiar weight of my tools around me providing some comfort. "How long has this been going on?" "What do you mean?" "The feeling trapped. The need for space. The mysterious cabin reservations under your maiden name." Marlo wrapped her arms around herself. "A few months. Before or after Ronan left for college? Does it matter? It matters to me. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear the wind picking up outside, rattling the garage door. Winter was coming early this year. I met someone, she said finally. There it was. The sledgehammer falling, shattering everything I thought I knew about my life. At work? I asked. No. At the gym. Of course. The gym she'd joined 6 months ago, claiming she needed to get back in shape. The gym that required her to stay late for spinning classes and weekend yoga workshops. What's his name? Knox, please don't make this harder than it has to be. His name, Marlo. Derek. His name is Derek. I nodded, filing away the information. Derek, the man who was taking my wife to a cabin at Bear Lake. How old is he? She hesitated. 38. Younger than me. Probably better looking, definitely less calloused. I wondered if he knew about me, about Ronan, about the 15 years we'd spent building something I thought was permanent. Are you in love with him? I asked. The question seemed to surprise her. I don't know. But you're willing to throw away our marriage to find out. It's not that simple. Actually, I said, straightening up from the workbench, it is. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed and the sound of Marlo's car starting in the driveway. She was leaving early for work, though I suspected Derek was picking her up for their little getaway. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, before getting up and doing what I always did. Got ready for work. The Henderson Foundation wasn't going to pour itself. I was loading my truck when my neighbor Frank walked over with his morning coffee. Frank was retired military, the kind of man who noticed everything and said little. Marlo left early today, Frank said. She did. With a suitcase. I paused, my hand on a bag of concrete mix. You saw that. Hard to miss. She also had company yesterday while you were at the Morrison job site. My blood ran cold. What kind of company? Young guy. Dark SUV. Stayed about 2 hours. Frank wasn't gossiping. He was giving me intelligence. The way a good soldier looks out for his unit. Appreciate you telling me, I said. Knox, you need anything, you holler. After Frank went inside, I sat in my truck for a long moment. Marlo had brought Derek to our house. To the home I'd built with my own hands, where I'd raised Ronan, where we'd celebrated 15 years of marriage. I drove to the Henderson site, but my mind wasn't on the work. While my crew set up the forms and checked the grade, I made a phone call. Bear Lake Cabins, this is Jenny. Hi Jenny, this is Knox Whitmore. My wife made a reservation under her maiden name, Marlo Finch. I need to confirm the dates. Let me check. Yes, here it is. Cabin 12, Friday through Sunday. She specifically requested our most secluded unit. Perfect. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the phone. Friday through Sunday. Today was Friday. By lunchtime, I made my decision. I told my foreman Jake to finish the pour without me. Family emergency. Then I drove north toward Bear Lake, taking the back roads I knew from hunting trips with Ronan. The cabin sat on the far side of the lake, surrounded by pine trees and accessible only by a narrow dirt road. I parked my truck behind a cluster of boulders about a quarter-mile away and hiked through the forest. What I saw through the cabin windows confirmed everything I already knew but had hoped wasn't true. Marlo was cooking breakfast, wearing nothing but an oversized flannel shirt that definitely wasn't mine. Derek was younger than I'd imagined, with the kind of lean build that came from gym memberships rather than honest work. He had his hands on her waist, kissing her neck like they'd been together for years instead of months. I watched for exactly 60 seconds, then took 3 photos with my phone and walked back to my truck. On the drive home, I called my lawyer. By the time I got home, it was almost dark. I'd spent the afternoon driving around, thinking about the next 15 years of my life and whether I wanted to spend them with a woman who could look me in the eye and lie without flinching. The answer was no. Marlo's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, probably working on real estate listings. Or maybe texting Derek about their weekend plans. Hey, she said when I walked in. How was work? Productive, I said. Got some good shots of the Henderson Foundation. She looked up from her laptop. Shots. Photos. For the portfolio. I sat down across from her and placed my phone on the table. Speaking of photos, I got some interesting ones today at Bear Lake. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Knox, I can explain. No need. The photos explain everything. I showed her the first image, Her and Derek through the cabin window, him with his hands all over her. "You follow me," she whispered. I confirmed what I already knew. "There's a difference." She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. We're past the talking stage. So what now? You file for divorce and take half of everything." I shook my head. "I don't want half of anything, Marlo. I want you to leave. Leave. Pack your things and go. Tonight." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Knox, we can work through this. It was a mistake." I was confused, feeling trapped. "You weren't confused when you brought him to our house yesterday." Her mouth fell open. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that you disrespected our home, our marriage, and me. So now you need to go. And if I don't want to leave," I leaned forward, meeting her eyes directly, "then I'll make this very public. Your real estate clients, your family, Derek's family if he has one. Everyone gets to see the photos and know exactly what kind of person you are. You wouldn't. Try me." We stared at each other across the table, and I saw the exact moment she realized I wasn't bluffing. The tears started then, but they felt calculated, performed. "Knox, please. We've been together 15 years. That has to count for something." It did count for something. Right up until you decided Derek counted for more. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's your problem to solve. But you've got 2 hours to pack." 2 hours. Derek can help you figure out the rest." Marlo was gone by Thursday morning. She'd taken her clothes, her jewelry, and her wounded pride, leaving behind nothing but empty drawers and the lingering scent of her perfume. I found a note on the kitchen counter, written on her real estate letterhead. "Knox, I hope you realize what you're throwing away. 15 years doesn't mean nothing. I expected you to fight for us, but you just let me walk away like I never mattered. I'll be staying with Derek until I figure out my next move. M." I read it twice, then tossed in the trash. She'd expected me to fight for her, to beg, to plead, to make promises about changing into someone I wasn't. The fact that I'd simply opened the door and let her leave had clearly shaken her more than any screaming match would have. My phone rang. It was Ronan calling from college. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" Ronan asked without preamble. "Mom called me crying, saying you kicked her out. Your mother made some choices, son. I made mine. She said you wouldn't even listen to her side of the story. There wasn't much to listen to. She was sleeping with another man. In our house, in our bed. What side of that story was I supposed to hear?" The phone was quiet for a long moment. Then Ronan sighed. "Damn it, Mom. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. Are you okay?" The question surprised me. I'd been so focused on managing the situation that I hadn't really thought about how I felt. "I'm angry," I said honestly, "but I'm also relieved. Living with someone who lies to your face every day isn't much of a life. What happens now?" "Now I move forward. Keep working, keep building. Maybe buy that fishing boat I've been looking at." Ronan laughed, and it was good to hear. "You've been talking about that boat for 3 years. Well, now I don't have to ask permission." After we hung up, I realized that was the truth. For the first time in years, I didn't have to consider anyone else's opinion about my choices. It was liberating and terrifying at the same time. Friday afternoon, I was at the lumber yard picking up materials for the next job when I saw Derek's SUV in the parking lot. Through the window, I could see him talking on his phone, gesturing angrily. I loaded my truck and was pulling out when Derek flagged me down. Against my better judgment, I stopped. "Knox, right?" Derek said as I rolled down my window. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. Look, Marlo told me you kicked her out. That's pretty harsh, man." I studied his face. He was younger than I'd thought from the photos, probably mid-30s, with the kind of soft features that came from a life without calluses. "She made her bed," I said. "Now she gets to lie in it. With you. It's not that simple." "We're not. I mean, she's staying in my guest room." Something in his tone caught my attention. Having second thoughts. His jaw tightened. "She's not exactly what I expected. When we were sneaking around, she was fun, exciting. But now that it's real, she's high maintenance. She wants to redecorate my place, meet my parents, start planning our future. We've been together 3 months." I almost laughed. Almost. That's Marlo. Once she sets her sights on something, she bulldozes everything in her path. "How did you stand it for 15 years? I built her a house and gave her a life where she could bulldoze to her heart's content. You just gave her a guest room." Derek ran his hand through his hair. She keeps talking about you. About how cold you were. How you didn't fight for her. What did you expect me to do? Challenge you to a duel? I don't know. Something. She's making it sound like you never loved her. I put the truck in gear. Derek, let me give you some free advice. When a woman cheats on her husband and then complains that he didn't beg her to stay, that tells you everything you need to know about her character. A week later, Marlo showed up at my job site. I was overseeing a commercial pour downtown when I saw her BMW pull up to the construction fence. She got out wearing a dress I'd never seen before and heels that had no business being anywhere near wet concrete. Knox, we need to talk, she called out. I'm working, I replied, not looking up from the laser level. This is important. So is this foundation. People are depending on me to get it right. She waited by the fence for 20 minutes while we finished the pour. When my crew started the cleanup, I walked over to where she stood. What do you want, Marlo? I want to come home. This isn't your home anymore. I made a mistake. Derek and it's not working out. I could have told you that. She gripped the fence with both hands. Knox, I was confused. I felt invisible, like you didn't see me anymore. Derek made me feel wanted. And now I realize what I had. What we had. I pulled off my work gloves and tucked them into my belt. What we had was a marriage based on 15 years of trust. You broke that trust. For what? A few months of feeling wanted by a stranger. It meant nothing. It meant everything. It meant our marriage wasn't worth protecting. It meant I wasn't worth being honest with. It meant Derek's attention was more important than my respect. Tears started down her cheeks, but they didn't move me the way they once would have. I'll do anything to fix this, she said. There's nothing to fix, Marlo. You didn't break a vase or dent the truck. You chose another man over your husband. That's not something you repair with apologies. So that's it. 15 years, and you just done. I looked at her standing there in her new dress, makeup perfect despite the tears, and I saw clearly what I'd been too close to see before. Marlo had always been performing, always working an angle, always calculating what she needed to say or do to get what she wanted. I'm not done, I said. I'm free. Free. Free to find someone who knows the difference between love and convenience. Free to build something with a woman who won't tear it down the moment she gets bored. Her face crumpled. Knox, please. Go home to Derek, Marlo. Figure out what you really want. But whatever it is, it's not going to be me. I walked back to my crew, and she didn't follow. When I looked up an hour later, her car was gone. That evening, I called the boat dealer. 3 weeks after Marlo's last visit to the job site, I was having lunch at Murphy's Diner when a woman approached my table. She was about my age, with graying blonde hair and laugh lines around green eyes that suggested she'd found plenty to smile about in life. Excuse me, she said. Are you Knox Whitmore? I am. I'm Everly Chun. You poured the foundation for my pottery studio last year. I remember the job. Small building on the outskirts of town, tricky grade because of the slope. She brought coffee to my crew every morning and asked intelligent questions about the process. How's the studio working out? I asked. Perfectly. No settling. No issues. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. She gestured to the empty seat across from me. Mind if I sit for a minute? Please. Everly sat down and folded her hands on the table. I heard about your situation. Small town, word travels. I imagine it does. I also heard that people are taking sides, saying things about you being cold, unforgiving. I set down my sandwich. And what do you think? I think any man who builds a foundation that's solid knows the difference between what's worth saving and what's too damaged to repair. Her words hit me in a way I hadn't expected. For weeks, I'd been second-guessing myself, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too quick to write off 15 years. My husband cheated on me, Everly continued. 7 years ago. I tried to make it work, went to counseling, forgave him, took him back. What happened? He did it again. Different woman, same pattern. Some people cheat because they're going through something difficult. Others cheat because that's who they are. Which one was your husband? The second kind. And I suspect your wife is the same. I studied her face, looking for signs of bitterness or agenda. What I saw was clarity born from experience. How do you know? Because she brought her boyfriend to your house. That's not a mistake or a moment of weakness. That's someone who doesn't respect boundaries. Our conversation was interrupted by Derek walking into the diner. He saw me immediately and headed straight for our table. Knox, I need to talk to you, Derek said, ignoring Everly completely. I'm having lunch. Marlo's lost her mind. She's calling me 10 times a day, showing up at my work, telling people we're engaged. Everly raised an eyebrow and took a sip of her coffee. Engaged? I asked. I never proposed. Hell, I never even said I loved her. But she's planning our future like it's already decided. Sound familiar? You have to take her back. I almost choked on my drink. I have to what? She's your wife. Your problem. I can't handle this level of crazy. Everly cleared her throat. Excuse me, but did you just ask this man to take back his cheating wife because you can't handle the consequences of sleeping with her? Derek's face reddened. This is a private conversation. Not anymore, Everly said, standing up. Knox, I'll let you handle this. But my offer stands. What offer? I asked. Dinner. Tomorrow night. If you're interested in spending time with someone who knows the value of loyalty. She left money on the table and walked out, leaving Derek staring after her. Who was that? Derek asked. Someone with class. I replied. Something you wouldn't recognize. The next evening, I picked up Everly at her pottery studio. She'd changed from her work clothes into a simple blue dress that matched her eyes. As we walked to my truck, I noticed how she moved with quiet confidence, like someone comfortable in her own skin. I haven't been on a date in 7 years, I admitted as we drove toward the restaurant. Good, Everly said. That means you took your marriage seriously. Maybe too seriously. There's no such thing. Marriage should be serious. It's not a hobby you can drop when you get bored. We went to Antonio's, a small Italian place that had been family-owned for 3 generations. Over dinner, I learned that Everly had been a teacher before opening her studio, that she had 2 grown daughters who lived out of state, and that she'd spent the last 7 years rebuilding her life from scratch. What made you decide to start over here? I asked. I needed a place where nobody knew my story, where I could be Everly the potter instead of Everly the woman whose husband cheated. Do you miss teaching? I miss the kids, but I don't miss the politics or the pressure. Working with clay is honest. It responds to what you put into it. Like concrete. Exactly like concrete. We talked for 2 hours, and it was the first conversation I'd had in months that didn't involve lawyers, betrayal, or damaged trust. Everly listened when I spoke and shared stories that made me laugh. She was intelligent without being pretentious, confident without being aggressive. When I walked her to her door, she turned to face me. Thank you for dinner, Everly said, and for being exactly who you seem to be, as opposed to someone putting on an act to impress me. You're straightforward, Knox. I appreciate that. I was about to respond when my phone rang. Marlo's name appeared on the screen. Aren't you going to answer it? Everly asked. No. She's persistent. She's desperate. There's a difference. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Knox, answer the phone, Everly said. Put this to rest once and for all. I answer on the 5th ring. What do you want, Marlo? Where are you? Her voice was shrill, panicked. Out. Derek dumped me. He said I was stalking him, that he never wanted a serious relationship. That's unfortunate. Knox, I know you're angry, but we belong together. We have history. We have history. We don't have a future. You can't just replace me with some random woman. I looked at Everly, who was listening without trying to hide it. I'm not replacing you, Marlo. I'm moving forward. There's a difference. I'll fight for you. I'll prove that we're meant to be together. Don't. You'll just embarrass yourself. Knox, please. Marlo, listen carefully. We're done. Not taking a break. Not working through issues. Not trying again. We're finished. Sign the divorce papers and move on with your life. You can't mean that. I absolutely mean that. I hung up and looked at Everly. Sorry about that. Don't apologize for standing your ground. Most people don't have the backbone to end something cleanly. Is that what I'm doing? Ending it cleanly. You're ending it honestly. She expected you to beg her to stay, but you let her go, and now she instantly regrets it. That's not your problem to solve. Her words echoed something I'd been feeling, but couldn't articulate. Marlo had wanted the drama, the fight, the validation that came from being pursued. When I'd simply opened the door and let her leave, it had shattered her expectations. Would you like to have dinner again? I asked. I'd like that very much. As I drove home, I realized that for the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow instead of just trying to survive today. 2 months after my first date with Everly, Marlo made one last desperate play. She showed up at the job site where I was pouring a foundation for a new medical center, this time with backup, her mother and sister. Knox, you need to hear this, called out Janet, Marlo's mother, as she marched across the construction zone in high heels. I signaled my crew to keep working and walked over to the fence where the three women waited. Ladies, I said, pulling off my work gloves. Knox, this has gone far enough, Janet said. Marlo made a mistake, but 15 years of marriage should count for something. It did count, right up until she decided another man counted for more. Marlo's sister, Sarah, chimed in. Everyone deserves a second chance. She got a second chance, I replied. She got a third chance, a fourth chance, and probably a dozen chances I didn't even know about. This wasn't one mistake. It was 6 months of choices. Marlo stepped forward, looking thinner than I remembered. Knox, I'll sign a prenup. I'll give up any claim to the business. I just want us back. There is no us to get back, Marlo. Because of her. Janet spat, clearly referring to Everly. You're throwing away your marriage for some divorcee with baggage. I looked at Janet for a long moment. I'm moving forward with someone who knows the value of commitment. Someone who doesn't need 3 relatives to help her apologize. She's not good enough for you, Sarah said. Neither was your sister, apparently. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of concrete trucks arriving. I had work to do. Sign the papers, Marlo, I said. Stop embarrassing yourself and move on. And if I don't, she asked, then my lawyer handles it from here. Your choice. I walked back to my crew, and this time I didn't look back when they left. That evening, I got a text from Marlo. Papers will be signed by Friday. It was over. Finally, completely over. That night, Everly and I had dinner at her place. She made lasagna from scratch, and we ate by candlelight in her small dining room, surrounded by her pottery. How do you feel? She asked after I told her about the confrontation. Free, I said. Like I can finally start building something new instead of trying to repair something that was broken beyond fixing. What do you want to build? I looked across the table at this woman who listened without judgment, who understood that some things couldn't be repaired, who appreciated honesty over drama. Something that lasts, I said. Something based on respect instead of convenience. That sounds like a solid foundation. The only kind worth building on. 6 months later, Ronan came home for Christmas break and met Everly for the first time. They talked about art and teaching and life, and I watched my son relax in a way he never had around Marlo. I like her, Dad, he told me privately. She's real. Real. That was exactly the word I'd been looking for. 1 year after my divorce was finalized, I bought the fishing boat I'd been talking about for 3 years. It wasn't the biggest or the fanciest, but it was mine. Everly christened it with champagne and a name she'd suggested, Second Chance. Not for me, she'd explained. For everyone who gets to start over and build something better. We'd been together 8 months by then, taking things slow, building trust brick by brick. She understood that I needed time to believe in partnership again, and I understood that she needed proof that not all men were capable of betrayal. Ronan graduated college that spring and moved back to Montana to work with me. He'd studied business management and had ideas about expanding the company. Good ideas, as it turned out. We should specialize in sustainable construction, he said one morning over coffee. Green buildings, renewable energy projects. You think there's a market for that here? Dad, there's a market for that everywhere. And we've got the reputation to get in on the ground floor. He was right. Within 2 years, Whitmore Construction was the go-to company for environmentally conscious projects across 3 states. We hired more crews, bought better equipment, built bigger and better things. Marlo had moved to Arizona with some real estate developer she'd met online. According to mutual friends, she was calling herself a lifestyle consultant and posting inspirational quotes on social media about second chances and new beginnings. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek had moved back east after Marlo's stalking behavior had cost him his job. Apparently, showing up at someone's workplace declaring your undying love while they're in a meeting with clients is frowned upon in most professional settings. 3 years after my divorce, I asked Everly to marry me. We were on the boat, watching the sunset over the lake, when I pulled out the ring I'd had custom made by a jeweler in town. I know we both said we'd never get married again, I said, but I want to build something permanent with you. Something that can weather any storm. She said yes, and we were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at her pottery studio. Ronan walked her down the aisle, and her daughters flew in from Seattle and Portland. It was everything my first wedding wasn't. Intimate, honest, joyful. At the reception, Frank, my old neighbor, pulled me aside. "You know what I like about this one?" he said, nodding toward Everly. "What's that?" "She doesn't need you to complete her. She chose you because she wanted you, not because she needed you." He was right. Everly had her own business, her own friends, her own life. She'd chosen to share it with me because she wanted to, not because she was afraid to be alone. As I write this, we've been married 2 years. The business is thriving. Ronan is engaged to a good woman who makes him laugh, and Everly and I are talking about building a house together, something neither of us has ever owned with another person. I learned something important from my first marriage falling apart. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to let them go. Marlo expected me to beg her to stay, but I let her go, and she instantly regretted it. But that regret was hers to carry, not mine to fix. Building a life is like pouring concrete. You need a solid foundation, the right materials, and time for everything to cure properly. Rush the process, use inferior materials, or build on unstable ground, and the whole thing will crumble eventually. I'm 47 now, and I finally understand the difference between building something that looks solid and building something that actually is solid. The difference is in knowing what's worth building on and what needs to be torn down and started over. Some foundations can be repaired. Others need to be demolished so you can build something better in their place.